There's community partners that we need to call out. We also love to collaborate with Fam Connect. How many of you have the app of Fam Connect? It's kind of like LinkedIn for the LGBTQIA plus community, but it's a safe, affirming business networking app. So if you don't have it, check it out. And then of course, Out Professionals, who we collaborate with on our networking events. How many of you have been to an Out Professionals event, aka Out Pro? Is Danny Gray here? If you were, we'll give him a little shout out. So thank you to both of those organizations for being so supportive of us. And at this point, we're going to introduce our panelists, and to do that, I'm going to ask our Startout's vice chair to come to the stage, Kathleen Koshek, who's going to introduce our panelists, Amy Schneider, Brent Bam, and our host, Don Zarilla, sorry, Don, our chair and Scott King board member. All right, Catherine.
Wow.
Hi, my name is Kathleen. Thank you for coming. I'm the vice chair of San Francisco chapter, and such an honor because I'm actually an ally and very unique to be part of the community together. I just want everyone to know a little bit more about Startups as the organization. We actually have raised 1.6 billion since 2009, and then in the Bay Area, there's about 57% of VC that was funded in the LGBTQ community, and in San Francisco, there were 47%. So we are right in the center of the VC investment if you are in business or looking for funding. And we are the organization that helping you grow. And we have educational program. We also have a growth lab that for the have a great potential startup that in an incubator program that can grow together. So do go to our website. Let me just. Okay, so feel free to go to our website and then you can find out more about our organizations. And next, I will pass my mic to Dawn, our chair of the chapter, and then she'll be able to tell you more about the our panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy, and welcome everybody. This is very, very exciting. I am very thrilled to have two folks that I just think are not only brilliant, but diverse and very, very special. And I'm going to say it, celebrities, because they are celebrities. Do you agree they're celebrities? Seriously. What a thrill. I want to tell you a quick story. When I first met Amy Schneider, she had just won, right? At, come on up, come up, Win. Come on up, Amy. Let's hear it for them, please. Look at this, huh? Wow. Look at this. Unbelievable. Did I use the right pronoun? I'm sorry. Yeah. When I first met Amy, I wrote a card, a question, and I asked this question of her, which was that when she answered the questions on Jeopardy, did she have to filter the answers with her femme voice? She thought, wow, that's interesting. Wow. Wow, why would you ask that? And then I told her,
well, some of us had a much higher bar to achieve to get a higher voice.
And he's as surprised as some of you are to hear me talk like that, right? Yeah. So anyway, so I'm thrilled to see them. And Wynn and I, we first met in politics, and he too was very, yeah, I know. Still looking at you. Anyway, everyone, without further ado, I would also want to introduce my incredibly brilliant co-moderator this evening and long-term Startout board member here in San Francisco, Sky King. Wow. Sky, would you like to say a few words to kick us off?
All right, well, we're excited for this tonight, and as we go along, we're going to be addressing a couple of different questions, and we have note cards around. We want you to pose those towards the end. So hopefully we'll get to a lot of different topics tonight, but if there's something we missed or a burning question you have for these two, please include that. We're gonna go across a lot of different topics and themes tonight. So just appreciate your focus and look forward to the panel. So I don't know, Dawn, I say we go ahead and get started, right?
Okay, let's go. Yeah, yeah. All
And
right.
I think I get the honor of asking our first upfront questions. And those of you who know me know I might have a thing for AI and artificial intelligence and upskilling and sort of how do we get use these new technologies of the future. And so I'll be asking a couple of questions around that. But before we get into artificial intelligence, I thought we'd get into the human kind of intelligence, thinking about multiple intelligences. And how many of you have ever heard of multiple intelligence, the work that Howard Gardner did in the 80s and 90s, that there's many different ways for us to, I see a couple of nods, that's great. So I'm just curious, given that there are these different ways for us to be smart, even above and beyond what we learn in academia or in our schools, how do you both think about intelligence beyond the traditional definitions? And how have you cultivated these different types of intelligence yourself?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I have thought about a lot in the last few years, because, something that happens to me all the time is someone will come up to me and recognize me from Jeopardy, and say something along the lines of, you're so much smarter than me, or things like that, or even saying things like, oh, I'm so dumb, I can never get more than like 2 weeks on Jeopardy. And I understand what they're saying, but it always kind of bums me out a little bit, because the thing about knowing a lot of trivia is a particular type of intelligence, and it's not. I think it's more useful than the word trivia makes it sound, but nonetheless, it's not that useful, in life. And there's a lot of, in terms of emotional types of intelligence, in terms of abstract reasoning, just smart is not a one-dimensional thing, and I think that I don't think that the people who make Jeopardy believe that it is, but if there's anything that there's anything I don't like about Jeopardy, which there isn't really, but if there is, it's that it does kind of make people think that this is what smart means, and it's just more than that.
I think, hello? I think it is so important to evaluate and interrogate these different modalities of intelligence. Just a bit of background. So I run the Mensa Foundation, which is an outgrowth of this other organization called American Mensa. The foundation was founded just over 50 years ago, while American Mensa was more kind of the more famous high IQ society was founded 60 or 70 years ago. And American Mensa has so much notoriety because it's an exclusive membership society. You have to test in to qualify for it. And the way to qualify for it is just to take a standard battery of intelligence tests and score in the top 2% of standardized test takers. So 90th percentile. That's about 2 standard deviations above the mean, roughly 137, 138 or above. So for American Mensa members, that is the only dimension of intelligence that really matters to qualify. Whereas at the Mensa Foundation, we're a 501c3 charitable nonprofit. Our mission is to unleash intelligence for the benefit of humanity. We kind of have a mandate to provide a public benefit, and as part of that, we take an expansive view toward intelligence. We acknowledge the value of IQ, this one numeric assigned figure that everybody has. It does sort of fluctuate over time, but for the most part, you have it for the rest of your life. But beyond that, what are those other modalities? I mean, there's kinesiologic intelligence, there's musical intelligence, artistic intelligence, and those are all valid. But I think it's important, it's our responsibility as a foundation to acknowledge that there are different ways for intelligence to show up. And we also have to acknowledge that there is still value in maintaining some regimen and some rigor around what intelligence means to certain people when it comes to belonging to a membership society. Vis-a-vis, what does it also mean to be more expansive and to open up yourself and to look for different ways that intelligence shows up and how everybody can contribute to their communities.
Well, I was just gonna say that I think it will be about standardized testing. That's something that has always been happening. And I found it really, in school, it seems sort of odd to me that I was getting the best grades on those standardized tests, but I knew I was working smart in my class. And so it felt to me that, yes, there's something being measured there, but isn't necessarily because, I mean, to an extent, if there's something to hire, they want someone to be standardized ethic more than the works well. And so,
So just a
quick follow-up on that. So you mentioned that there's sort of body movement, physical, sort of interpersonal or other kinds of intelligence. Is there any other type of intelligence you wish you had more of, or that you would be excited, or maybe something we don't already know about you? In terms of one of these other more non-traditional types. People think about it.
I don't know. I think that like I don't know, in terms of intelligence or skills, I think there's an aspect of, I mean, like I can't keep track of things. I lose my phone all the time. I don't have like object permanence. And so that's kind of the main one that comes to my mind.
In a former life, I was a competitive cheerleader and I became obsessed with Simone Biles. And I wish I had her level of kinesiological intelligence because, man, what can she do? What can't she do? I also think something that I've picked up on you, Amy, is I think you have really high interpersonal intelligence. You're really fun to hang out with, is what I'm saying. Intrapersonal intelligence. I sometimes wish that maybe my introspection were a little bit stronger and maybe I could be more reflective. I mean, I lead a really crazy life. I have a lot of stimuli flying at me from all angles at all hours of the day. So I'm being very responsive and reactive. So I would say intrapersonal intelligence I would love to cultivate more.
Well, and now we're going to slide into the artificial intelligence area. So while AI is often talked about in abstract terms, we're seeing real world moments that challenge our assumptions of AI and what it can do, like when chess grandmaster Hans Niemann recently beat ChatGPT in a game of chess. And many assumed only machines would be excelling in that area and would dominate. So it raises the question, what does human intelligence offer that AI can't replicate, and vice versa? So I'm curious with you two, as individuals with a strong foundation in human intelligence, how do you view the role of artificial intelligence in shaping our future?
Yeah, I mean, I think, talking to tech people in SF, but I'm actually I'm pretty skeptical about AI right now. I think that there's a thing about it is there's AI as a thought experiment, and what's in science fiction, and which I don't disagree is theoretically possible. Like I don't necessarily disagree that our brain can't be replicated by a Turing machine. But then there's what we're calling AI right now, which is is pattern matching. And there's a lot of really useful things that it can do. I think like, translating between languages, I think that's incredibly useful and helpful. Because that's something where, being 90% good enough is 90% good enough. And while there are certain circumstances where you'll always need 100%, just for navigating around a foreign city, 90% is incredibly useful. But it's that fact that cannot get to 100%, that means for so many applications, it's just not enough because it will give you an answer, but you're going to have to check it every time if absolute accuracy is important.
So that's, and I just think that's inherent in these large models that, 100% is not an achievable goal of just their architecture, the way that they're designed. So that's where my kind of skepticism about the kind of more high-flowing things about it comes from.
So technically, right now, AI can qualify for American Mensa. Have you heard that? I think it's like GPT-3 or GPT-4 when it's scored high enough. What's interesting though, on the Mensa Foundation side, because we are interrogating what it means to be intelligent, we actually had a whole conference on AI earlier this month. It's called our Colloquium Conference, where we gathered experts in the industry to discuss, ethics, morality of AI, the limitations of AI. And the broader understanding right now is AI is a useful tool, and it should be treated as such, and it should be used in the appropriate environments. And its limitations should also be acknowledged. For example, right now, LLMs, large language models, are pretty good at being referential and derivative and creating from existing material. But what's lacking is emotion and humanity, nuance, and legit creation of new, novel ideas and subjects and matters. And so when we acknowledge the importance of AI and its value as an additive, rather than a replacement for human intervention, then we'll have a much better time integrating it into and controlling it. And I think something that also came up that I think about also is, does AI signal the demise of humanity? And I don't want to name names, but during this conference, I was involved in a live on stage demo speaking to an AI avatar, and I just asked it that question. And with all of the testing that we did before and all the preparation, it malfunctioned in that moment on stage in front of an audience of hundreds. So to cut the tension, I made a quip. I was like, I guess that answers that, which in retrospect, I probably should have called back. But what that means is, while AI might be able to replace a lot of human activity and tasks soon, we're not there yet. So I'm not quite scared yet, but I do just urge all of us to be very judicious and circumspect as we proceed.
All right, a quick follow-up to that is, what do you think are the biggest opportunities and risks that AI presents, particularly for the queer community?
Well, I think, sort of in terms of risks, it's, AI is trained on, the corpus of the internet. And, like the corpus of the internet is not necessarily, I've been on Twitter. It's not necessarily friendly to queer people. And so, that's, so it's like, and on the one hand, yes, I think that, the more responsible people developing AI are aware of that and trying to account for that and moderate for that. At the same time, then you're still at the mercy of whichever, corporation is doing that moderating. So I think it's again, just sort of, recognizing that it is a tool and it's not a person, and, it has to be used as a tool. Yeah, that's what I think.
In a former life as well, I worked in the queer media arts space. And what I learned from that role was we need to make sure that the storytellers of our community actually come from our community. I think that could be translated into tech and into AI. We need to ensure that we are wary of our unconscious biases, that we can address them by ensuring that the people who are designing these models do reflect the communities and the populations that they purport to represent. So all I would ask is that if you are in the AI space and you are in charge of building your teams, make sure that we have some broad representation. Make sure that we have queer people, trans people, people of color, all those that often get pushed off to the margins, so that we can make sure that we're centering everybody in these models and not just those that are typically in positions of power.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's see. Did you hear me for a second? Yes. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about education and the DEI initiatives that you find under a great deal of scrutiny, which may not be strong enough for it. We're at a time where an executive order one day and practices did this completely dismantling the Department of Education. Universities under attack. We all read today that Harvard may give back $500 million to appease the federal administration. On top of that, there are significant ripple effects in the access, inclusion, equity, etc. It's a pretty evolving landscape. I should almost say it's a landslide, right? It's not a landscape, it's a landslide. I apologize if I'm offending anyone out there who is offended politically by comments like that. I don't see anybody leaving yet.
You're speaking to the choir here now.
My question is, with all of this that's going on, and I know you two are working very hard to bring truth to the world. And if I may give a little plug for Amy, she's got an incredible podcast, right, these days called Translator. Incredible. You almost think she's wow, like a PhD psychiatrist when she wrote this. Congratulations. So what impact do you think all these changes will have for the future of learning and the future of education? The future of our country and the future of the world? It's a very general question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, a few things that come to me from out of that, one is that, I think it's certainly, look, I, have done a fair number of speaking engagements at universities and at, DEI groups of various corporations. And 9 months ago, for some reason, I stopped getting those invitations. And that has, affected my ability to, make a living and support myself while I try to do these, sort of artistic projects that are what I'm really interested in. And so, yeah, it's attempting to silence voices, like mine, and to some extent, it's going to succeed on some level. But the other thing I think about it is always that, all the most that they can do is send things back to where they were, 20, 30 years ago, which is where we started from. And so the idea that that is going to it's not good, it's definitely bad, but the idea that it's something that we can't and aren't going to recover from, I think is just, at the end of the day, there's nothing that they can do whatsoever that will make me not be trans. I just still will be. So, yeah.
DEI is something that I have explicitly lived with in a former life, but also currently to an extent. I used to run SF Pride, the San Francisco Pride. It's the city's largest annual event, and it's run by a board of directors and the staff that work year-round to put on this celebration, this demonstration of queer visibility and of affirmation and acceptance. Now that I'm in my role with the Mensa Foundation, it's a very different kind of charitable organization. Still, I find some parallels. For example, when you compare the populations of queer and trans people versus people who are gifted, highly intelligent, neurodivergent, they're both born a certain way. They didn't get to choose it. Yeah. They cannot meaningfully change it, and they face negativity because of it through discrimination, bullying, exclusion, erasure. That can kind of be said of any minority group. So DEI actually is everywhere, not just in the queer community. Now, take that to my new work with the Mensa Foundation. At the middle of last year, we had just concluded a year-long partnership with the College of William and Mary, where we commissioned them to survey just over 3,400 individuals who identify as highly intelligent or gifted or neurodivergent. And we saw some themes. Education came up very explicitly. And what was found was there needs to be better mentorship for people who are different. There needs to be just better acknowledgement and better identification of people who are different, whether it's through intelligence or whether you're queer or trans or any number of a dimension of diversity, especially because schools are the driver of young people's informedness and how they view the world. It is so important to provide them with the tools and the perspectives that will set them up for success in the world. And when you take DEI out of that in any educational environment, whether it's K through 12 or post-secondary or beyond, you're limiting the potential of our people to be those informed citizens. So yes, we do have a threat against us. But as long as we still have institutions that do positively nurture our young minds and maybe our young at heart minds, then I think we will overcome.
Thank you. Amy, what approaches do you take to keep current and smart? And ask you the same question, Lynn. You know, what are you reading these days, and what do you watch? You watch television? Or?
Yeah, I do a bit. I read a lot. I always have from as long as I can remember. And really like in terms of keeping current, what I do is I read a lot of what I read is history, which I think is actually a really good way to stay current. It helps you, when you can see, history running over time, and you can see sort of the patterns and just how people, exist together. And it can give you a lot more perspective on what's going on in the world right now. I think that, it's something that I actually, my mom, one of the lessons she taught me was talking about her parents' generation and how they had gone through the Great Depression and World War II, and then come out of the other side. And by the time my mom was born and sort of conscious, they were out of it and in sort of kind of the most prosperous time that the country had ever known. And so it's worth remembering that especially in the current day with the internet and knowing everything that happens in the world immediately, it can be so hard to step back and take a bigger picture. And being up to the moment is not the same thing as being current. Like you need to be able to have both of those perspectives in mind.
So how do I stay sharp? Two things. I am an extrovert, so I stay connected. I'm always trying to talk to people, whether it's my friends or whether it's my adversaries. I'm trying to sharpen my own worldview and understand what we're all up against. I think it's important to remain in dialogue with people, even with those with whom you disagree, especially with those with whom you disagree. On the flip side of that, I isolate. I know it sounds kind of weird because especially as minority groups, we should never isolate. That's how we literally and figuratively die. But I have to rest sometimes. Something that I carried forward with me today through my work with SF Pride previously is rest is revolutionary. Oftentimes we as activists are told that if we're not working hard enough, if we're not in pain, if we're not sad, then we're not contributing enough to our cause. No, that's just what the oppressors want me to think. So I make sure that throughout all my extroversion, with all the conversations and dialogues that I engage in, that I do take time to myself to sharpen my own mind simply by sharpening my blade, so to speak, by resting my brain a little bit. That's how I stay sharp.
Very good. Has everyone, by the way, noticed Wayne's shoes this evening?
Oh, yeah. All the time.
I know. Later on.
Fun fact, my mother picked these out for me.
Oh.
And my mom's sitting right there, by the way.
Please be my next topic. Shoes, now. Actually, it's about identity and careers. Did you pick that? There's not a person in this room, I'm sure, that hasn't made a decision at least once in their lives. Should I tell them? Do they know? Are they gonna guess? Will I get fired? Will they hold it against me? Will they look at me differently? Right? And we all know that to be LGBT, etc. There's a great deal of perseverance. There's a great deal of courage. And I know you both have it. Big time. And yet it's very, very personal to us. So you both show up, especially you, Amy, in very public spaces. I know you are recognized on the street. What advice would you offer everyone here in terms of coming to grips with their authentic selves and being the very best person they can to build their careers and their personal lives? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I certainly, I came out at work in 2021. And I mean, coming out in San Francisco in 2021 is by far the most difficult form of coming out that anybody's ever had to go through. But, certainly it was frightening in a way. And so I definitely, I find the term courage there, there is truth to that. But at the same time, it did not feel like something that I had a choice about. It just simply, I couldn't go on any longer. And so I just had to do it. And I think, one of the things about being trans in particular is that, you can't really, I mean, you can if you really, need to or choose to, but for the most part, you're just out to everyone you encounter, and so, I just knew that because at that point I was out to everyone except my workplace, and I just I couldn't keep going back and forth. But I think that one of the things that I've already started to realize and realized more and more ever since then is that, being out has made me better at everything. I would not have done as well in Jeopardy if I was in the closet. I did better at my career once I came out. I mean, just everything else became easier because there wasn't this weight and this friction that was holding me back from everything. So, I'm, go with that. It's very true. It is that tremendous weight. I call it a huge distraction. So congratulations, you both came in. Go ahead.
I've been super fortunate. So, born and raised Silicon Valley, son of unusually progressive Vietnam refugees who just accepted me for everything that I am. Founded my high school's GSA, the Gay Straight Alliance, to thunderous successes, so welcomed. And then went on to university across the Bay, where there's already a thriving queer student population. And now I've lived in SF proper for almost 20 years. And through all that, my default was authenticity. I didn't know how to hide. I actually technically never came out just because nobody ever yeah, I'm gay, everyone, he, him. He's coming out. And throughout all of my activities, my scholastic endeavors, my professional development, I have never felt the need to be anybody else than who I am. And I know that that's a very privileged and very lucky position to be in. But it's works for me. And so I know my position of privilege. I would assert that similar to what Amy has just said, you gotta be yourself. Otherwise, you're not gonna be as productive. You're not gonna be unleashed. And I take that approach also with my identity as a member of American Mensa, for example. There's a big debate in the Mensa communities whether or not to even list your affiliation on your resume. And what I found is, in my experience, the right employers will be either positive or neutral to it, and the wrong employers will view it negatively. So whether you are a member of a specific group or whether you are LGBTQ, I think wear up your sleeve because otherwise you're just not going to be as good of a worker. And to those people out there in positions of hiring, please take that same approach too.
And I just wanted, I think this is kind of on a tangent now, but like talking about privilege that people kind of addressed in a way. I think that, as, as a white trans woman, I have had the experience of living my life perceived as, the unmarked white straight male persona and having to sort of, quote unquote, choose to give that up. And I think that, I've learned what life was like with that privilege. And I think that the answer to that is to be aware of it and to keep it in mind. But it's not to, my problem isn't that I had that privilege. My problem is that other people don't. Everybody should move through the world as freely and confidently as a straight white man. And so that's just a point I wanted to make.
Wow, thank you. I just wanted to ask a follow-up. And I can't help but identify with both of you, obviously, in many different ways. Amy, in your days, you probably had several more acceptance, I'm guessing, than maybe a generation before you, correct? You were really back at awesome. And win as well. I sound very old right now, but I'm wondering, have there been many challenges that you turned into great opportunities? And Jeopardy is obviously an obvious one. Yeah. Let me just talk about Jeopardy for a moment. During that period of time, did you receive decent feedback from the audience, or you were getting death threats?
No, at least none that I saw. I definitely did not read the internet very much, especially right at the beginning. That said, I mean, certainly there were some things that kind of slipped through, and sometimes I slipped up and read the comments here and there. But the fact is that it was, overwhelmingly far more positive than I expected. And I think, a big reason for that is just that Jeopardy, despite yes, it has the older demographic of an audience and things like that, but it is actually quite a progressive show and kind of by its nature, has to be, because its whole, purpose is to say that once you get up onto that stage, nothing else matters about you except whether you get the questions right or not. So it is, in that sense, within the confines of the game, a true meritocracy. And so, they can't, make people feel unwelcome because whatever identity might come along and be a champion and somebody that they want to promote. And the people who watch Jeopardy are the sort of people that are going to appreciate that. So, in terms of ways to become famous as a queer person, I recommend Jeopardy, I guess.
Excellent. Wayne, what, you're both so successful, but we all had challenges in our lives. And how would you overcome the challenges that you've identified? You can share that.
Oftentimes, as an intersectional minority, as somebody who's queer and a person of color and neurodivergent, I'm often my biggest enemy. So I've often had to rely on that intrapersonal intelligence. I don't quite have as strong as I want to. And I also have to rely on my network, my support team. And with my mom, who's my biggest fan and my biggest cheerleader, all my friends, many of whom are in the audience today, they are who prop me up. I am nothing without the people that impacts my life. And that took me a long time to acknowledge, to be vulnerable, and to share myself with people other than myself, and to let people in. So that was a big challenge. And I think something else about those external naysayers is, I think about 15 years ago, I was having lunch and my fortune cookie, I remember this, my fortune cookie said, "A great pleasure in life is doing what others say you cannot." So oftentimes it's those external factors that fuel my flame as well. So I'm like, well, if Panda Express can be this wise, like surely I can carry this forward and achieve and aspire to greatness. So yeah, rely on my network and fortune cookies.
Fabulous, thank you. And it is all of our community, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ask some more questions. So we have a lot of entrepreneurs in the room. And I'm curious what advice you would have for people who are at a crossroads or who are considering taking a big risk in their career or their personal life, especially because the world that we're in doesn't always reward those big bold moves or support those big bold moves. So what advice would you have for entrepreneurs on taking more of the risk?
I could kind of use some of that advice myself. I have sort of inadvertently become an entrepreneur. I own a small business, which is me. And it was not something I planned on in my life. So I've been kind of having to learn as I go. And so to all of who are that, first of all, I respect you. It is in fact really hard. I now understand some of the ways that like founders and companies I've worked for acted. But I think that, I guess what I would say is that, that there's like, I'm trying to find the right way to say this, like, it's a risk not to do things as well. Like, it's a risk to not take these opportunities and not take these risks. That's one of the sort of built-in cognitive biases of the human mind, is to treat acting as doing something and not acting as somehow then you're not responsible for the outcome if you don't act. But not, as my mother would say to me when I was being indecisive, not to decide is to decide. So, there's risks both ways. You have no idea what the future holds, no matter what decision you make, and you're not gonna get to live your life twice and find out which one was the right answer.
I realize I'm speaking to a room of Silicon Valley luminaries here. And also as a Silicon Valley born and raised person, I know the ethos, I know this whole idea of move fast and break things and be disruptive and no risk and no reward. And all of that is true to a degree. Also, I believe in being like informed and data driven. For example, with the Mensa Foundation I mentioned earlier, the study of unmet needs of highly intelligent people that we partnered with the College of William and Mary on. As a 54-year-old organization, we had been doing things kind of the same way for most of that half century. But now we actually have data to inform our next move. So our organization is being deeply intentional with these insights that we have gleaned from these 3,400 plus survey subjects. And so it is much more comfortable to have actual information and legit insights to inform all our decision making now. And there is still value in being that risk taker. I think that ultimately the answer is a little bit of both, column A and column B. And I love what you said, Amy, to not choose is to choose.
I may just say, Amy, we took huge risks in double jeopardy.
Well, that's another thing too, and it's actually something that, James Holzhauer, a professional gambler, would say. I mean, it's kind of along the lines of being data driven, but you have to fight the biases of your mind. You're thinking, oh, if I miss this question, I'll lose a lot of money, but you won't. Like in the context of Jeopardy, that money is yours until the end of the game. You're not losing anything. Like every game, you're going to walk out of with more money than you started with, even if you come in third, at least get a little something. So letting go of that idea that, you play the odds and you let it work out how it's going to go. And if you bet big and it was the right thing to do, and you miss out, then you didn't lose anything. You made the best strategy and you got unlucky, and sometimes you get unlucky.
So I want to go back to where we were talking about sort of being in the public eye. And a few weeks ago, I was leading a virtual workshop to support people who are going through a layoff. And it was about 15, 20 minutes into it, it was Zoom bombed with really graphic, violent porn. And it wasn't just disruptive, but it just really infringed upon this sort of safe space, this vulnerable space that we were trying to create. And, it impacted me a lot for many, many days after that. And I feel like I got maybe just one tiny glimpse into what somebody much, much more in the public eye might receive in terms of trolls or negativity or sort of people trying to, yuck your yum or whatever it is. So I'm curious if you have any advice for people who are going through that type of experience. I mean, you see the tragedies online where there, are influencers that just, succumb to, the just horrible speak out there and sort of even when they're trying to do wonderful things like saving animals or whatever it is. So what advice would you have for people as they're going through that type of experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, one thing, I don't want this part of it to sound like, giving advice can sometimes sound like, just sort of toughen up and, that sort of thing, and I don't want it to come across that way. But that said, I think that, one of the things to realize about it is that, online, these people are not talking to you, they're talking to, something that's in their head, that it has nothing to do with the real you. I say to people, like, at some point I stopped worrying about Twitter because I just realized that everything on Twitter is just someone somewhere in the world just on their phone going. And like, that's it. And they're not really taking it that seriously. So I try to keep that in mind and not take it so seriously in that sense as well. I mean, I think really one of the formative experiences for me was during my run, one of the women I competed against got a lot of negative comments online because she came across very like humorless and like this sort of thing. Certainly as a woman, she wouldn't have gotten the same feedback as if she was a man. But also, I knew that I knew that really wasn't how she was at all. She came off very differently on TV than she did in person. And I also knew that B, like, I know what it's like to like root against somebody on TV and sort of pick out a villain. And I knew that almost all the people who were saying those things had that in their mind, that if they'd ever met them, they wouldn't have said it to her face. Right. And they wouldn't even have really, they would have been shocked at the idea that they would say it to their face. They're just having fun with a character on TV. So, like, the people who know me, and the people who know me from my public self, my public self, and those aren't the same thing.
Completely agree. I love your insight about most of those detractors actually aren't attacking you, they're attacking kind of themselves, but they're just projecting on you. But even so, it's tough to ignore the vitriol and the toxicity that does get launched at you. For example, after 54 years as an organization, the Mensa Foundation now finally has a president that is not white and not straight for the first time ever. Yay me, but also that makes you a very easy, very visible target for this pent-up frustration that's due to whatever's going on in the broader space. And so I have to remind myself that I still have people. And I think the only piece of guidance I'd give anybody who's confronting this is find your people. Because you all do. You always will have people, even if you think that you're alone. Not true. I am your people. I promise. Because everything that gets thrown at you, you can roll the punches. Also, it's okay to be sad and scared. Those are valid feelings, but they keep you safe a little bit. it's also okay to be strong and to acknowledge nonsense when nonsense is being thrown at you. And again, I also feel the same way. I don't love dispensing advice like that, but this is my lived experience. It has not been perfect, but it has always been meaningful, and I've always either won or I've learned. And I think we can all agree that we will always win or we will learn.
Yeah, totally. And I think that, one of the things that I also think about is that when people see me being attacked and see me not giving in and not going away, that is something I'm doing for all of them every day.
Yep.
When they face the attacks that all of us are likely to face or may face at some point. I'm providing them with a model that it doesn't have to destroy you. And so, that's it's a way to feel good about being attacked.
Well, Amy, you won, how many games in a row? 40. 40 games in a row. 40. Right there. Can you share what that number was in earnings?
That was about $1.38 million. Yeah.
Wow. Uh-huh. And then, hey, get in line. I told it first. How did you handle the stress of taping 5 episodes a day?
Yeah, it's something that I went down there with, a reasonable amount of confidence, but I certainly didn't expect anything like that. So that wasn't a thing I was prepared for. And it's definitely, it's exhausting, and I learned early on that I had to really conserve my energy. But the thing about it is that the skill I had worked on in my head going into it was just really thinking about focus. How was I going to, assuming that I only had one game, how was I going to make sure that I spent that entire 30 minutes just focused on the question, not getting in my head, not just freaking out if I start to get behind and being like, oh no, it's almost over, things like that. When those things came into my head, how was I going to pull myself back into that moment? And so, however tired I was feeling, whatever, that stress was, because I had worked on that skill, when the game's being played, that's what I could always fall back.
How do you both do a routine that's particularly effective in maintaining that balance in your life? Oh.
Oh, stress and burnout? Well, I experience it. It's valid. I do get stressed out. I do get burnt out, and that's fine. We all do. And I try to maintain some harmony between myself and the world around me, whether it's with my community of people or even just my environment, even my apartment. Just try to remain harmonious. And I'm very privileged as well, very, very fortunate. I live in Castro here in San Francisco. It's a very walkable city. And so at least to get some physical activity, I focused myself out on what I during pandemic, when we were doing stay at home and shelter in place, I forced myself out on what I called a daily sanity walk. Because I knew that being an extrovert and having to quickly pivot to being like a fake introvert for, 15 months, I knew that I would not survive. I just didn't touch grass every once in a while, so I did that. Also, I am a creature of habit. I've been this way ever since I was a child. I had my nightly routine where I do my oral hygiene, I do my skincare, and I go to bed. For example, that helps me to maintain some sense of control. And I don't know if it's healthy or not, but it's gotten me to where I am, and I'm pretty happy.
It's certainly something that I struggle with for sure. And so to some extent, I still don't have the answer to that. But one thing that I do is I stop and I think about myself in the third person, or I think of myself as like a character in The Sims, and I'm like, wait, what does Amy need right now? Not what do I need, because then I get in my head about what I deserve or anything like that. But like, oh, Amy seems unhappy. Does she need to eat? Does she need, to like get outside? What does she need right now? And that's one way that helps for me.
I think this is our last question before we get into a lightning round. So you both have mentioned the people and support and others in your life. And we know behind every success story is someone who said, hey, I think you can do this, or maybe a little bit of a push, whether it was somebody who was a formal mentor or just someone who had maybe a little bit of wisdom along the way. So we're curious, who have been some of those influential mentors in your lives, and what sort of impact did they have on your journey? Or maybe if there's a piece of advice from a mentor that really stuck with you.
My favorite human in the whole world is sitting in the third row back here. Come on. No, get this, y'all. So this is a woman who came here in the mid-1970s when Saigon fell. She declared a refugee. She had nothing. And she came to Silicon Valley on a whim with her family and slowly, somehow ended up being a tech firm executive in 1990 Silicon Valley, when being a woman of color in any position of power was unheard of in that ecosystem. And she created a gorgeous life for her family, my brother and me. And, if she can go through all of that and make the sacrifices that she made and still pick out and buy fabulous shoes for me, then I can get through Monday.
Yeah.
So that is my inspiration. That is the whole reason I am the way that I am. That is why I always seek to do my best to affirm and uplift the people around me that provide some semblance of value to me or to the broader community. I think one thing that we are always in short supply of is just acknowledgement and affirmation that we are worthy, that we belong, that we are seen and heard and celebrated. And I think that those messages are lacking. And that's why oftentimes I am my own worst enemy. And that's why when that happens, I text my mom. Yeah. So again, she's my people, but we all have people. And if you think you don't have people, then I will be your people. And that is a promise to you.
Thank you. Could I be your assistant? I think that, there are a lot of people in different ways, but like really, I think, one of the people that had the biggest impact on my life was my friend Jen, when I was coming out. She's just an incredible trans ally. She's cis, but like she gets us in a wonderful way. And just, from the moment that I first started like saying to her, I found one, she was just so right there with me. I remember there was a bar we both went to, and I never used the women's room there. And I told her, I was like, I think I need to go home. Was like, I'm gonna use the bathroom. And she was like, oh. And she just grabbed me by the arm and walked over. And we went to the women's room and, walked out. And she was like, see, it's fine. You're fine. You belong in the women's room. It's okay. Just like constant moments like that. I had a lot of welcoming people in my life, but just to have one person who would just be kind of forceful in that welcomingness was really, really valuable.
Outstanding. Well, before we move into the lightning round, let's please offer them a round of applause. All right, Scott, you go first.
Okay, so these are meant to be super quick responses where it could be a word, could be a phrase, or could be a sentence. So the first one is, what is one hobby or activity that helps you to relax?
Jigsaw puzzles.
Charitable cheerleading. Cheerus.org. Come on.
All right, what is your favorite word or phrase?
Fabulous.
I don't know, I like a lot of things or phrases. I don't know, I just saw the word of Morgan today, and there's just something about it. It sounds like what it is, like sort of like dry wit, that's like very mordant. I don't know. I like that.
Insatiable intellectual curiosity.
Allegedly.
Bad with something that brings you joy.
My cats.
My people.
People are good too.
People are good.
One thing you wish you could tell your younger self.
You're a woman.
Love yourself more.
That's great. Did you just say you're a girl? Yeah, I love it.
You're a girl.
Terrific. Okay, my turn?
Yeah.
Who's your favorite genius?
Amy Schneider.
You really want her money, don't you?
The person that comes to mind, honestly, Ken Jennings. He's a fabulous person.
Yeah.
What's your favorite curse word?
Ooh. Curse word.
I mean, I guess five. It's just so versatile.
I'm not gonna curse in front of my mom. Not in English. It means something in French.
I think you know what that means. Terrific. Who's your favorite actor or actress?
Ooh. It's nice.
First off the top of my head, Gary Oldman.
Bowen Yang.
Bowen Yang.
What's your favorite movie? Or I know a lot of them. Okay. Who's your favorite comedian?
Oh, ooh. I mean,
Mitch Hedberg. The movie is Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World. People don't often expect me to say that, but it really is.
Comedian right now, Mateo Lane. And
Oh,
movie
yes.
for now, The Devil Wears Prada 1, but soon The Devil Wears
Yes.
Prada 2.
Oh, we have a new
It's gonna be in.
And finally, what decade you associate your inner self with? And what decade you think you might have liked to have lived in?
I'm a 90s person, like that's, Daria and all that sort of thing. I mean, it's obviously as a queer person, it's always hard to like, but if you sort of take that out of the picture, I'll probably the 20s.
You stole my answer, so I'm instead gonna pivot to 80s. But also I'd love to have experienced the 70s. Wild times.
Very gritty in New York City. What was that? Yeah. That's like you guys. Very, very gritty, nurtured up, cleaned up you. All right. I think it's time for Q&A. You all agree?
Right, so we had a few that were submitted, so we're gonna work through these and then we're gonna go to those in the audience. So, oh, we have a few more. Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, I have some.
Yes. All right, so the first one is for Amy. The first one is for Amy, which is what are your favorite categories of Jeopardy and why?
My favorite are the wordplay types of categories. So like, anagrams or, 4 letters, 1 vowel, all those sorts of different things, because, speaking of multiple intelligences, that's one of the ways that they are testing a different type of intelligence than just remembering facts.
And this one is for Win. What was the most rewarding part of running SF Pride? What was the most challenging?
Rewarding was throwing one of the world's most visible demonstrations and celebrations. I was on that board for 8 years, and it just got better, especially in the wake of a certain general election in 2016. That's when I formally came on the board. It was an interesting time. So that was rewarding, just to see the joy and affirmation. And the challenging, I won't be specific, but being called on to respond to very timely current political events and acknowledging that not making a statement was itself a statement. So it was very challenging to actually make that statement, but to do it in an informed and holistic and inclusive way.
And there has, of course, been a big scale back in corporate donations and Suzanne has, board as executive director, has said pride. Who sent her very best. He's out of town tonight. When someone here asks, when you say, I am your people, what does that mean?
It's a bit philosophical, but I want it to be tangible too. I sometimes in my darkest moments have just felt so alone and so isolated that I really had nobody. And I knew that was incorrect. My biggest cheerleader is sitting right there, but I couldn't always remind myself of that. So sometimes I just want to say those words out loud. If you think that you don't have anybody, just know that you have at least me in your corner, even if you haven't met. But something tells me that if you're in this room and if you're watching from afar, we have something in common. And I want to know that you're supported, and I support you.
Question for Amy. Someone asks, walk us through a typical day of taping for you as a Jeopardy contestant. What does the live audience not see? What's going?
Yeah, so you get there about 7:30 in the morning, and you go in and they run everybody through hair and makeup and check your outfit to make sure that it'll work on TV. As that's going on, they're giving you the briefing that is just a real detailed rundown of all the rules, even though, you know, almost everybody there has been watching it up here forever and knows all the rules. They, you know, just have to legally do that. There's a third-party lawyer there to monitor everything for fair play, and they get a little, you know, briefing as well. Then you go over into the actual studio and you have a rehearsal. Everybody gets 2 times up on the stage to be there with the exact environment of the game, and just get a feel for it and you know, before they're actually up there competing. Then you all go back to the green room and they randomly draw 2 people to be in the first game and off you go. Whoever wins the first game goes back to the green room, changes into another outfit, goes right back on stage and plays game 2. Until all the way up through, there's a break after the 3rd game for lunch, and then you play game 4 and game 5, and that's the day. In terms of what you don't see, you know, one thing is that, you know, the host does not in fact recite every clue flawlessly, which is like obvious when you think about it, but you know, when I saw that happen, I was like, oh yeah, so like, you know, frequently they will, you know, whichever host it is, because I've seen tapes with Alex all the way, and you know, it's the same with Ken, that we'll just stumble over a line, or, you know, and then, so whenever there's a commercial break, one of the things that will be happening is we'll be going back and just re-recording that, reading that clue. Or it'll be, you know, different things, like one thing, for example, that, you know, he early on was still like adjusting to was he would say things, like, join us tomorrow night for the next episode. But the fact is, it doesn't air at the nighttime everywhere. There's some markets where it airs in the afternoon, so we'd always have to go back and record that just to say, join us tomorrow. So yeah, that's, yeah.
Amy, if I may, it's an interesting story. I heard you when I first met you. Tell us about the check that you won and the party you went to.
So yeah, you don't get the money until after your episode or episodes air. This is like partly just so they can hold that over you to make sure you don't, they go around leaking the results. Like technically, if you did, they could just withhold your prize money. Well, I don't know if that's ever happened, but they do have the right. So yeah, and depending where you live, you may get things withheld, you may not. If you live in California, you just get a check for the amount that you won, and you have to deal with the taxes yourself. So on the day that my last episode aired, I got a check FedEx to me for $1.38 million, and it was just a wild thing to see. It was not something I ever expected to see in my life. And we're having a party with some friends who knew it was my last day. And I was like, well, they gotta see this. So I brought it with me. And then we popped champagne and it got all over the check. But it's still clear, so it worked out all right.
Thank you.
Right, so the This next question is about whether it's a resource or group. What are you most excited about? So a resource or group that you are excited about.
In any specific context, like
No. It could be, is there a resource group, something you use every day, an organization you're really excited about?
I can answer that. Start out.
Start out, okay.
Thank you.
Right, we'll go to the next question, which is, what type of intelligence should LGBTQ people be honing, both individually and collectively, with things like AI, the current administration, others? So what should our community be honing or getting prepared for, given the seismic shifts happening in our world right now?
I mean, I think, one of them is certainly the sort of self-care that I think we both talked about a bit. But I also think that when it comes to honing intelligence and learning, it's whatever you're most interested in. Whatever you can make into an enjoyable exploration and not homework. So like, because otherwise, like, you won't retain things that you force yourself to learn is something I've learned.
That's true.
Which is actually, I was gonna say, like, one resource, I guess, that I would mention is Wikipedia, which is really something that we all kind of take for granted, and there's no reason it has to exist. And is just an incredible resource, an incredible, just sort of like human accomplishment.
same answer. I was going to say exactly the same thing. Whatever form or modality of intelligence makes you feel the most yourself, makes you feel the most unleashed, and makes you feel the most fully authentic. We need a diversity of intelligences, and we need a broad spectrum of LGBTQ people to continue to fight this mounting detraction and vitriol and toxicity that's getting thrown and launched at us every single day. And in terms of resources, I'll piggyback off of that. sfpride.org. Don't forget, SF Pride is a 501c3 charitable nonprofit. They are the city's largest annual event, and they need funding. Also, Mensa Foundation.
Yeah.
We're looking to unleash intelligence to make the world a more gifted-friendly and more neuro-inclusive place. And if any of that speaks to you, please visit mensafoundation.org/give and help us out. And being that the Mensa Foundation is not a membership organization, you do not need to test in. Anyone can be a donor. Thanks in advance.
Is it money or, is it money or a student? Is it, this is one. Is it, I see why you talk so loud now. When this, you get a really powerful microphone. Tell me something. Growing up, were you I'm not reading, I don't have many more of these. Growing up, were you encouraged to continue to learn or make money?
I mean, I definitely learned by far, and that's something that I find incredibly valuable, and I'm so appreciative for my parents for that. They're really, like, my mom talked about the phrase "the life of the mind," and that, because it's something that, like, I did not get as, like, at times I did wish I was pushed a little harder. I didn't, like, have great grades because, like, all of that sort of thing. My parents wanted to make sure that I was going to end up being able to support myself and having a career, like being practical in that way. But beyond that, they didn't think that was the purpose of learning. They thought that the purpose of learning was learning.
Hey mom, what was the message? Money or learning?
Learning.
Learning. That's all.
We're going to move to if there are any other questions in the audience.
Yes. Would anyone like to physically ask a question? Kathy? I should ask any of those questions. Should I? I don't know if I should do this. A little controversial. Ken Jennings recently did not endorse our governor for potential run for president. Did you see this quote? I did not. Okay.
it was in regard to support of trans kids and something that he said quite frankly, that anyone who, now is the time to come out and support the trans community, especially our trans children. I guess my question is, what's your response and do you agree with Ken Dennis?
Yeah, I do. I actually, now that you said it, I remember I did see that. And yeah, I mean, it has been very dispiriting to see many people, argue that like the thing Democrats need to do is to throw trans people under the bus.
Right.
Unbelievable. I mean, what's the point of winning elections? Like, point of winning elections is to, do things, is to help people. And yeah, I mean, that's been more challenging to me than the hate that's been coming from the other side, because that's always been there. But to see the support for trans people was so much more shallow than I realized has been tough.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to say this as well. I'm actually also an athlete. I'm a trans athlete that plays competitive sports. And we're talking about very amateur level sports. The beautiful thing about the Bay Area is we're all very inclusive. It's a very complicated topic. And get further up the competitive rank, there's a lot of money involved. It's so if you would even ask me how I feel about this, I have a lot of mixed feelings about it.
Me too.
But as Amy just said, we've got to be very true to ourselves. And Bobby, you could be an athlete, a scholar, and trans. Brad, did you have your hands up?
I cannot review the question. Don't let us end on that. I don't know.
One more question?
All right, this is Chris, who's one of our brilliant board members.
Woo, Chris.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Amy. Wen, can we please give them another round of applause? So I have some notes to share. We're going to do some networking as we wrap up. We're also going to do some book signing and a few, quick meet and greets. There's a lot of people in here, and we don't have time to run the entire meet and greet full thing. So please be expeditious in your time. And then I also want to talk to you about upcoming events. For start out, we've got a few things in the works. The biggest one to look out for is Starbucks HQ annual demo day. It's going to be Tuesday, November 4th, where we highlight a select number of founders who apply from across the US. From local programs, we're going to be doing a pitch roast where we get to have founders share their stories and then get roasted by investors and comedians. And then we're also going to give them a lot of feedback about how to pitch. So it's going to be educational. Sky's going to be running a Burnout Bootcamp series, and that's something to look out for on startup.org. And we're also going to be working on one of the first and largest inclusive AI and tech startup job fair. That's a really, really big one to look for. And so we have many more in the works. So please find a QR code, follow our link tree, or sign up at startup.org to follow for more events. We're going to take a quick selfie.
A big group selfie, so you can all see where you are.
And before we do, I would be very remiss in not thanking our Start Out team that you can't do this alone. And they work very, very hard. You see Chris and Sky, Catherine. We have my predecessor, Alex Lopez here. Back here is Ryan. Ryan, who just did an amazing job bringing us together. There's Katsy there, you met at the registration desk. Jake and Eugene And there's Danny Gray, we mentioned him before, who's not on our board, but he's the head of Outbrow. And Hitesh is back there, Dr. Hitesh. And I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. There are 13 people on our board. I'm very, very proud and very honored and quite privileged to be the so-called leader of this organization. I'm very grateful. So come on up. We'll try to take a picture with something like this. Let's sit there. Thank you. I take orders very well, right, Rick? Thank you.
Are you in?
Okay, we're gonna do one normal, okay, all right, how about the Lisa boys?
I'm not. Yay.
And I forgot Alice. Oh, where's that cord?
If you are interested, we have some books over here on the side, so we would just ask if people are interested in saying hello, doing a quick photo, getting a book signed, anything like that, to just please queue over here on the side, thanks. That first thing sounded like something you guys would do. Oh, maybe.